Welcome to Fathers Unfiltered. This is a podcast that allows separated fathers to tell their story. We've got today's guest. Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us your name, what you do for a living, how many kids you got, and what their ages are.
Yeah, so my name's Ryan. I'm 30 years old, plumbing and heating engineer. I've got two children, 7 and 6.
Yeah. Okay. So, to give you an idea of how it works, we're going to start at the beginning of your relationship to give people context, touch on the main beats of the relationship, such as when you had kids, when you moved in together, and if there's any key events that happened, eventually moving on to the separation and how your relationship now is still with your children and your kids' mum. You've also do quite a bit on TikTok, which if we've got time, we can certainly touch on that. I'm going to be asking questions to try and guide you, and then it's a case of simply allow you to give you plenty of time to say your piece. If we get a little bit ahead of ourselves, I'll pull it back and try and keep us on track of where we I feel we need to touch, but that's pretty much it, so we can get into it from there. So the first thing I'd like to ask is, how long were you with your ex for?
So we was together for, imagine getting this wrong. We was together for about 12 years. So it was young love, really. We both met when we was 16, I believe, and sort of by the time we were 17, we was in a relationship together. We started off previously as quite good friends. So, 17, and we became a couple. So, young love. Obviously, in terms of growing up, we grew up together, if you like. You know, as young adults, teenagers, going out clubbing and all that, we experienced all of that life together, which at the time seemed great. Sort of looking back now in hindsight, actually, that's going to become a key failing in the relationship, is the fact that actually we never found ourselves as adults. We found ourselves as a couple from a young age, but, you know, we sort of never, you know, for example, there'd be silly little things that, you know, it got to a point in my life where I thought, I've never been out clubbing and approached a woman and, you know, tried to pull a woman. And it's these simple little things that, you know, at the time seemed irrelevant. But I think as you grow older, sort of late 20s, it's certainly become a very pressing matter for both of us. Actually, we'd never gone out and experienced these sort of things in life. All we knew was each other. I had been in a previous relationship, but for her, I was her first relationship. So, you know, first time, you know, first boyfriend, first sexual encounters, everything like that. I was her first, which, again, from my point of view, was one of the things that I loved so much about her, was almost like the purity that, like, this woman, like, no other man has been with this woman other than me, which I found a powerful thing, especially in this day and age.
Very understandable.
And of course, she would grow to have concerns and sort of wandering minds, if you like, of which I don't blame her for, and it's something that actually, towards the end of our relationship, we'd talk extensively about to see if we could overcome them curiosities together. But so we met, we actually worked together, part-time job, working in Morrison's. I was the trolley boy, she was the cashier. One of them sort of scenarios that over a period of time we'd get to know each other, and the friendship would obviously eventually sort of blossom into something more.
So I'm guessing the first 6 months was just casual dates, going cinema, or just meeting up, and it was pretty easy going if you were quite young.
Yeah, at the age of 17, I mean, obviously we'd go out and about, but, you know, at that sort of age, probably reality is it was more of a case of coming around, just hanging out and, you know, sort of lying to the parents about where we are and, do you know what I mean, sneaking into the house late at night. But all them kind of things that just made the relationship so exciting so early on. So, probably in terms of dating early on, it's hard to cast back that far. But yeah, we'd have gone out and done about. It's one of them times, isn't it, where you realistically you're only earning sort of £600-700 a month, but
Yes.
you're paying your mum £100 a month housekeeping, and the rest is yours. It's ironically the richest I've ever been. I've never had more cash on my hip than I did when I was earning £700 a month.
Yeah.
But so.
So how long ago was that then?
So yeah, I'm 30
years?
now, so that would have been about
15?
sorry, I'm 30. I'm not even 30. I'm 31. Imagine that. Yeah, it's been a long couple of years. Yeah, so that would have been 14 years ago now we met. So yeah,
So you've been separated about 2 years, is it?
coming up for 2 years now. Yeah, we're coming up for 2 years, and yeah, like I say, early on it was great. It was exciting. Something that I've come to realise later on in my life is that I have attachment issues. So, without sort of going into depths and things like that, but I've had a lot of counselling, therapy and stuff like that. And so having come from a broken family myself is that I crave attachment from someone.
Okay.
So a fault on my side is that I actually probably was very foot down on the relationship when I decided, that I believed that this would be the woman.
So you wanted
for example.
affection, you wanted confirmation, you wanted someone to show they wanted you. and
Yeah,
all that.
exactly that. To feel wanted,
Yeah.
to feel that confirmation that I'm worthy of something, which is something that, again, later in my journey and my battle with mental health would become a very sort of poignant topic.
Yeah.
So I can't remember exactly, but I think by the age of 20, we was engaged.
Okay.
I was actually engaged before I'd even moved out of my mum's home.
So, well, before you jump too far into, did anything significant happen before, say, you getting together and the first 3 years? Or is it just pretty steady sailing that you're seeing each other and it's getting along pretty well?
Yeah, I'd say it was pretty steady sailing. Not to say that there wasn't moments that maybe sort of I felt like I was missing out. Well, actually, no, that's not strictly true. So probably one of the major things that did happen is that obviously when we met, we were still at school. So we was doing like AS A-levels.
Yeah.
And of course, there'd become a point where we'd look at where's the next step. So university, for example, become a very sort of thing. I was educated at grammar school. I would leave school with 3 Bs at A-levels. So education-wise, like, I was very academic. I had a place at university. I was accepted at the University of Essex.
Okay.
I opted to not go to university. Young love, stupid, things like that. I was with the woman of my dreams, right? I wasn't going to sort of throw all of that away for a university degree.
Yeah.
As a result of that, I would opt to not to go to university.
Did she want you to go to university?
It's not. It doesn't stick in my mind that she didn't want me to not go.
Okay. But she didn't object when you said you were staying?
She didn't object when I was staying, and I certainly equally can't remember her going, you should go to university.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's one of them. Nothing significant there in terms of her objecting or equally, which is just as important, encouraging it.
Yeah.
I would decide that I would stay working at Morrison's. No real plan. I mean, awful decision. Anyway, so a couple of months after opting to not go to university, I would become very bored. I needed to stimulate myself, so I decided that I'd go down to the college as I was still entitled to free education as I was under the age of 19. I'd enroll in a course just to occupy myself. Believe it or not, I would choose plumbing. For one reason only, and that's because it was on the first floor of the college and I couldn't be bothered to walk up 2 flights of stairs every day. Absolutely ludicrous, right? So that's how ultimately I ended up becoming a plumber. I was fortunate in the fact that in terms of the group of students I was with studying plumbing, that actually I was far more educated. I was the only one there of A-levels. Most people had sort of done GCSEs and very few of them even to a particularly great level. So every apprenticeship opportunity that would come forward was presented to me first, as I was the one that was constantly excelling in all the exams,
That's good.
which would eventually land me a job as a plumbing and heating engineer apprentice. So that's essentially how I got into plumbing. At the time, that seemed great. My friends were at university. I was out earning money. I was doing particularly well at my job, and I would find myself climbing up that ladder faster than most people would. By the age of 21, I'd be doing pretty well within plumbing and earning good money, far more than.
Is that where I guess, you felt it's time to, get engaged, or?
No, I was still engaged whilst I was an apprentice, earning £30 a day, if I'm completely honest. That had no impact on the decision to get married, other than the fact that I thought this woman was the woman that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Obviously, I've opted to not go to university, which has reinforced that sort of thought process. So, as a result of that, I would be earning particularly well. By the age of 21, we was engaged, and I'd bought my first home.
21.
I bought my first home at 21, yeah. So I bought a house that was not in great condition. I would do it up, and I'd make fantastic money on it. That's great going forward. At the age of 21, to have a house, earning well, and having good equity within your property, I felt like I was doing well in life. So the next thing, of course, would be children.
So how long was it from getting engaged to the point of kids? Was it like a choice, or did it happen?
No, it was a choice. I've always been big on family. Something I've always wanted was children. I was keen to have children young, purely because I had the philosophy that have children young because I can enjoy my life later. That it's something that
it's not a bad idea.
No, like, I was thinking by the time I'm 40, I'd have had my children. I'd have enjoyed it. I'd be
you get your second life then.
100%. And you'd see people like all your friends that have gone travelling the world, and I was so envious of that they've seen all these places in the world, going on all these holidays, whilst I was at home working 60 hours a week. But all my friends would say, I can't believe you've already got a house, you're so lucky. So it was one of them. It was two sides to every coin, right? But I had it in my head that this is how I was going to do it. Later on in life, once sort of, potentially by the age of 25, my children would be, 45, my children would be sort of into their 20s. I would be mortgage free. I've got another 20 years of my working life where, like you say, I've got a second life. That was my focus. That was the dream. And that's what I was working towards.
You had your plan all laid out.
Yeah.
And
that's it.
Okay. So about having the kids, was it something you sat down and discussed? Or was it?
Yeah, so the plan was to, as soon as we got married, we'd have children.
Okay.
That is more or less what happened. She would end up falling pregnant a couple of months before the wedding.
I bet she didn't like that.
Well, at the time she seemed to. No, it was impatience from my part. I couldn't wait. It was something that it was agreed that, she'd come off birth control. It takes a few months, for things to start working again. It just happened a little bit faster than what we was expecting. But that was fine. Like I say, by the time when we got married, she wasn't showing. It wasn't public knowledge. The only people who would know at that time were my parents and her parents.
Okay.
So, yeah, very early stages of pregnancy. But she was pregnant on the wedding day. So, yeah, children would literally sort of follow, 7 months after we'd got married.
So at the moment, the relationship is still, as far as you can see, you've got your future planned out. It's all pretty good. Everything.
On the whole, yeah, on the whole, it was pretty good. They're looking back now, there was probably telltale signs within the relationship that maybe we shouldn't have even got married.
Okay.
From my point of view, there were certain things that, it was, once we've got our own place, this would change a little bit. And okay, well, let's get our own place. And maybe that's one of the things that sort of pushed me into that direction a little bit more. Things didn't quite materialise. It always felt like it was the next excuse. When I say excuse, maybe they were legitimate reasons from her point of view, but looking back now, I'm sitting there thinking you know, maybe there was early warning signs there, but, you know, you're blinded by love, right? At the end of the day, I was convinced this was the woman that I loved. This is the woman that I'd spend the rest of my life with. That's the goal I was working towards. That was it. So, yeah, children would come along. And
how did you feel during I know you're about to get married, so you've got that going on, which I don't know how much input you would have had in mine. I didn't have a great deal.
of the wedding,
Yeah.
well, yeah, she told me the date and what time I had to be there.
Sounds like me. Yeah. Okay. So you wouldn't. But how did you feel about the actual pregnancy? Did it change anything with you personally? I didn't notice or feel any change up until the point that the child arrived.
Yeah, and I think I would say the same, and I think that's common with most men, is that it's not real.
Yeah, it's not.
Until it's there. And yeah, so I was excited for the pregnancy, of course. There was certainly, I felt like a pressure that I needed to provide, that I needed, you know, I'd find myself working more, a lot of private jobs to, you know, buy all these prams and things like that are expensive. That was my job as a father at the end of the day. And I'll do it again in a heartbeat, you know, but I felt a pressure there to provide. But until the day that the baby was born, I don't think it felt real.
No, I was still going out playing Pokemon Go during the first, it was 2016, and I was out every night. Yeah, that was
2016. Funny enough, that was the year my daughter was born. So
was it? Well, it was 2015, but I mean just after probably actually. Yeah, I think the kid was already here. Yeah,
but I got Charizard out of it, so it's all good.
So you've now got married, and you've had your first child. How were the first 6 months? You becoming a dad?
Hard.
Really?
Yeah. So my first child had quite a traumatic birth, and as a man, I can honestly say that I've never felt fear like it. Baby was born 4 weeks early.
Okay.
Spontaneous labour. So within, I think she called me at about 5:30 to say that she thought her waters had broke, and the baby was there before 10 o'clock. So very quick labour. As a result of that, my daughter would be born. When she's born, she wasn't breathing. So they came out, the baby came out, my daughter came out. It was a case of put the baby in mother's arms. Do you want a photo? Baby was taken away. Obviously, alarms have been pressed in the room that we were in. Doctors are rushing in and out. They're like, right, Dad, you come with the baby. So I've gone with the baby, and you sort of see them trying to get baby's heart going and breathing, bright blue, under lamps. I've never felt fear like that in my life. As this is happening, another alarm rings, to which I see a number of hospital staff, doctors, midwives, I don't know, I can't remember, it's a blur, running into the room that my wife was in. So I'm standing there, I'm looking at my baby that's, you know, they're telling me he's going to have to go into intensive care, and okay, you know, we're going to take the baby, you know, we'll come and get you when it's ready, but we ask for the parents not to come for the first stage as we insert tubes and things like that, as it's not a pleasant experience. With that, I'm seeing hospital staff running to my wife, and it's just like, what the fuck's going on here?
Yeah.
I've gone back to the room and my wife has gone. So all of a sudden, I found myself in this maternity unit. We've come as two. It's meant to be this moment in time where you're told it's meant to be this beautiful thing. It's the happiest moment of your life. And it weren't that. I've never been so scared. I, you know, don't know. No one's there. No one's available to talk to. I've walked off. As I've walked off, my mum called me as it goes. I messaged my mum as soon as the baby had been born to say, like, baby's arrived. She sort of sent me a message, all okay, you know, the silly things that mum want to know.
Yes.
I haven't responded to that because all of everything's going on. So she's got wind of something's not quite right. So I've got this phone call from her. I'll never forget it. She's phoned me up. I'm trying to make my way out of the hospital. By this point, it's sort of like 11 o'clock. So the way we came into the hospital had been closed. So we had to go through the main reception. All I can remember is on the phone to my mum, just going like, no, nothing's okay. I don't know what's wrong with the baby. I don't know what's wrong with her. I don't know what I'm doing. And as I've gone talking to her, I'm trying to open the door to get out of the hospital. But of course, it's locked for security reasons. I've just started pulling on this door. All I want to do is, get outside. I'm screaming. I'm crying. I've lost the plot. Never in my life have I felt as scared as I did in that moment in time. And I don't believe you can really understand what true fear is until you will know when you've experienced true fear within your life. Never in my life have I been that scared. It's quite a traumatic birth, really. I'm self-employed, so we then spend the next week to and fro in the hospital. Baby was in intensive care for a few days. Thankfully, everything was okay. Nothing sort of too serious going on.
Did it all settle down with your wife as well at the time? I'm guessing.
Yeah. That
was
just turned out to. That was just a case of bit of heavy bleeding. Okay. So nothing, mate. But of course. Yeah, you don't know. I'm left out of the loop. Yeah, I'm left out of the loop. So, yeah, she was all okay. She was back there. I think by the time actually I had sort of made my way back up to the maternity unit, she was there. So we'd spend the next week to and fro in the hospital until they had discharged my daughter. I was self-employed, so I'd sort of, I'd allocated a week's money, if you like, for to spend a week at home. But of course, I think the day we came home, the following day I was due back to work.
Yeah.
I opted to take another couple of days off work to spend a bit of time at home. There would be, I would lose money from doing that. Fortunately, my boss is very sort of, is very good with things like that. So financially, I can't remember it being a burden or a problem at the time, but it was certainly a prominent thing in my mind at the time. I'm not earning. I struggled to bond with my eldest.
Really?
Yeah. It's something that I've not really spoken much about, but I have recently, and actually it's not an uncommon thing within fathers that have daughters. I was scared to change her nappy. I was scared to interact with a baby in case the world saw me doing something wrong and would see me as being something I'm not.
I get you. Yeah.
And that was tough. As a result of that, I struggled to bond with my daughter. And like I say, have heard that that's a lot more common in fathers than it's probably dads would like to admit. Like I say, I kept that to myself for a long time. That's why. I mean, it's ludicrous, isn't it? Like I didn't like changing my daughter's nappy in case somebody saw me wiping their bum and labelled me as something that I'm not for doing so. Because that's the society now that we are in, Yeah,
it's pretty harsh.
Yeah. I did struggle to bond with her. It took me a long time. And I think that may come from the immaturities of having children young, is that I couldn't see beyond that.
Did that change over, say, did it take a year or two and then you no longer had to think about, or is it something that was always sat in your mind?
It's something that's always sat in my mind, even, to be honest with you, up until sort of the last couple of years or so, is something that's always been prominent within my mind. I would overcome it gradually, I think, from pressure from my wife, really, about getting involved, about, I was aware that I was lacking on my side.
So you allowed her to take, I guess, a lot of the burden of that.
Yeah, and wrongly so as well, wrongly so. So yeah, that was first daughter, and once we sort of got through all that, life seemed good, I was earning well, I had my first daughter, married, and yeah. As far as you sort of have this picture of what life should be, I felt like at the time, I was doing all right.
How long, I guess, did that good situation last, or did it continue until the second child?
I would say that continued into the second child. You know, we decided we'd have another child. There, you know, again, I'm aware in certain situations that I probably failed as a husband in terms of not being there for my wife as much as I should have been.
How was your relationship at that point before you had your second? Was you as good as it's ever been, or?
Well, I would say we was pretty level. It's
Yeah.
one of them relationships that I don't think there was highs or lows. We never argued, you know, we never rowed. We always sort of seemed to be on the same path or thoughts of, you know, what we want. Equally, I don't really recall there being fantastic highs. Do you know what I mean? So it seemed level, it seemed steady, and
It just sort of worked.
yeah, and I was happy going along with that. So yeah, we would then opt for baby number 2. There's just over 18 months between them. So, you know, within 9 months of baby number 1, we was sort of
Okay.
going again. In the meantime, we was sort of starting to try to piece it together. Baby number 2 would have come along first. Had baby number 2.
Was there anything different having the second child as opposed to the first?
No, I felt more prepared for it. The birth within itself was pretty sort of good. I had them fears, and you know,
It was
from
gonna
the
happen.
first one,
Yeah.
still wasn't that sort of beautiful moment that everyone says it is. More like a scene from a horror movie.
Yeah.
I vividly remember the emotions. I vividly remember being scared when she was giving birth the second time. But no, I think, yeah, pretty good. Life was pretty good.
Okay.
So, yeah, we would, by this point, again, I was sort of still earning more and more money. You know, I was still leaps and bounds above all my friends that have gone to university. So I thought, I've done the right thing here. You know, I've got my home, I've got my children, I've got my wife, I'm earning well. We would opt to move. So we decided that we'd move for a bigger house. You
Okay.
know? So we've gone from our sort of 2-bed, mid-terraced house, small garden, refurbished, made good money on it. We've moved into this 3-bed, semi-detached house, sort of big garden. You know, I know it sounds silly, but you know, the driveway, the garden, it was like
You've arrived.
100%. That's exactly what it's like. It's like I've made it.
Yeah.
There was, and I can sit there, and I remember sitting in my new house thinking, like, I'm the richest man in the world. You know, nothing can take this away from me. Like,
You've got a family, you've got a
Yeah.
wife, kids, house.
What
you're
more do you
earning
want?
well.
how old would I have been by this point?
24, 25.
25, yeah.
Still pretty young.
24, 25,
Pretty young.
yeah. And, you know, there'd be a lot of people that are around me would, you know, would go, oh, you've done so well, you're smashing life, you know. I wish I could be like you. And my friends would say it all the time. I wish I could, you know, have what you've got.
Yeah, it's a really great position to be in.
It is. I think there's a few people within your life that you always look up to. And when they're telling you that, you know, you're doing really well, actually, I felt pressure that, okay, this is what we've got, but what's next? You know,
Yeah.
I've got that within, I've got an addictive personality. I won't stop. I always want the next big thing. So I was quite aware that, you know, this isn't where we're stopping. But at the moment, that moment in time in my life, I was very happy with the position I was in.
So you're married, you're 25, you've got 2 kids.
Yep.
What was the next significant event for yourself? Is it like the kids going to school or?
Yeah, nothing. The next significant event, I mean, none really. And, you know, it's probably the part of where it all starts to sort of untangle itself as well.
So life just sort of
Yeah.
rolls along.
Right, life started rolling on. I was doing some work in the garden. The garden we bought was massive, think it's about the back garden's about 50 meters long.
Wow.
It sort of ran downhill, so I started terracing the garden, and it turned into this 3-year project. But when we bought the house, I wanted to buy another house to refurb. She didn't want to. We had kids, so the settlement was we'd get somewhere where I can do work in the garden. So the project of completing the garden was my focus, and yeah, I don't think there was. I mean, this would be 2017, must be 2018, because I'd got the first part of my garden completed for my daughter's first birthday. She was born in 2017, so yeah, we must have bought that house in about 2018. So 25. So yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to. We would then have a period of where we would separate. I'm trying. COVID was 2021.
Was it 2020? 2021?
2020. Yeah, so it was the November before COVID.
Okay.
Anyway, that we would have a brief period of separation.
Do you know why that came about?
I think, listen, this is my version of events. Yeah,
Sure.
She worked during the day. I earned enough that, you know, we could get by on my money, but it wasn't enough to thrive. So she also worked. She wanted to contribute. That's fine. I've got no problem with that. She started taking extra shifts on a night shift. She was working more and more nights, and I didn't like that. I didn't like going to bed on my own. I didn't like spending the evenings. I mean, I commuted an hour and a half, 2 hours to work. So I was up at leaving the house at 5:30 in the morning. I'd be getting in at about 6, 6:30. Dinner would be on the table. I'd eat my dinner, and as I finished my tea, she would leave to go to work. So there was no time between us. I would, you know, proceed to sort of clear up after dinner, sort the kitchen out, put the children to bed, read stories, have my shower. And of course, by that point, it's like, well, I need to go to bed because I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I began to feel like I had no life. Equally, it was I wasn't seeing her. And that was my main thing. I put emphasis on that as the breakdown of our relationship first time round. And yeah, I think it probably was, in my opinion. I'm not saying that I was the perfect husband or anything like that. We've all got failings, and you know, I do believe that we have to take accountability for a failing of a relationship. But I see, you know, that was a major factor for me anyway.
Couples can get in a rut, and it's easily done.
I think that's what it was. I mean, ships passing in the night or something like that.
It wouldn't help.
Things were tense. You could feel it in the home. And we'd have a conversation one night to which she said, I just don't know if I love you anymore. It's like a dagger through the heart, right? You know, I was the proudest man in the world. I was with the woman of my dreams, my kids, living this perfect family life. So I vividly remember her saying that she needed just some time to think. So I would move into my mum's for a few weeks, told the kids that I was working away rather than sort of putting them through the situation, and tried to give her some space, really. We would sort of talk in and stuff like that, you know, just trying to see if we can work forward. And yeah, we come to an agreement at the end that we would try, you know, we try to make this work for the sake of our children. So that's what we done. I gave it my all. I gave it everything I had. I really did. I think the problem is that when you try too hard, you actually lose who you are. You start doing gestures. You start doing things that you can't maintain.
Yeah.
Big failing on my behalf there. But I was all of a sudden I found myself grafting for my own wife, you know, for her to want me. And that's how it felt. We would then be struck with COVID, which would then force us into this period where we was forced into the home together. which was very unusual. Like I say, she was working nights. So for us to suddenly have all this time together was very, very unusual.
Okay.
I was quite tied up with the garden project. So I spent a lot of time in the garden. The weather was amazing. I'd be out there with the children, doing bits in the garden. It was important for me because I had a history still by this point of struggling with my mental health. Although I'd never spoken about it, it was a battle very internal within myself, but I was aware. So it was important for me to keep myself busy. So I opted for the garden, and yeah, I'd absolutely blitzed the garden by this point. And by the end of COVID, the transformation within the garden was unreal. And again, I was proud of Punch. And actually, it's just funny, isn't it, how particular moments stick in your head. I just remember this one evening, I think I'd finished a section of the garden, all the artificial grass was laid, and we had a trampoline. And I remember watching my daughters and my wife playing on this trampoline together. And I just leant over sort of the fence. It was a terraced garden, so they was down the floor. I just remember just standing there, leaning over. I took a photo of it because it was that moment in my life where I felt like a proud man. I felt like I had everything. Like nothing in life can take this away from me. Yeah, and it's a moment, simple thing, right? Of all the things that we had ever done, one of them moments will always stick in my head. And it was just that I've got everything. Pure, that feeling of feeling rich. And again, I think if a man's felt that, they will relate to what that feels like.
So, was there any coming back of the relationship off the back of that, or how did it progress? Because COVID lasted quite a while. That was a good, 18 months?
Yeah.
2 years?
Yeah.
Until they started opening everything up.
I thought that COVID probably saved our relationship. Obviously, that's not how it quite panned out. But yeah, at that moment in time, I definitely felt that COVID had sort of...
It gave you a chance.
Yeah, that's how I felt. I can't really remember any ups and downs. First year of COVID, leading into the Christmas, everything seemed pretty good. I had lost my granddad during COVID, and that would sort of trigger me into a downward spiral within my mental health again. Not properly addressing that, something that I only really sort of realised in therapy after. Coming into the Christmas time, everything seemed good. I would then get COVID myself in January, and there's things that stick out in your mind, right? So obviously I was locked in the room, staying away, trying to do what was right. And she was good, to be fair to her. And I remember FaceTiming her. She was a sort of a bit down in the dumps and all that. And I was trying to make her laugh, and to which she turned around and said something to me like, "I'll stop being stupid," or something like that. And I can't remember exactly, but ultimately I tell her to fuck off. Yeah, I'll just fuck off. You know when it's one of them. So I'm trying to have a laugh with you. I'm trying to lift you out of this mood, and just embrace it. And I don't know why. Maybe that's the first time that I'd ever told her to fuck off. I don't know, but it sticks in my mind as a moment like, you fucked up there, mate. Yeah, and that would be 2000. So that would probably be the year that we'd... can't be. I can't. I was struggling with dates, but I think the next year, over the next period of year would really be to start the demise of our relationship.
So was she still working at this point?
Yeah. She had a brief period of time off during COVID, but then she would go back to work before me.
Okay, so you're straight back to...
Yeah, I think she was off for around 4 or 5 weeks. I was off for about 12, 13 weeks. Which, again, as a self-employed person, initially that was scary.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Boris Johnson pulled up trumps, and he would keep us going. But yeah, it was what it was, right? You made do. I mean, equally our expenses had sort of dived right down. So financially, we weren't actually. I'd say financially, it's probably one of the best periods of my life. Mortgage had been put on hold. Sort of, I took everything around me that was available to me initially as a panic. But I'd defer mortgage payments. Boris was doing his self-employed scheme, which was sort of just about keeping us afloat, but we weren't going out anywhere,
No.
So actually, financially, we was okay. I think it was nice. We was in our own little bubble, and as much as people talk about COVID in a bad light, say I lost my granddad during COVID, which is was sort of a process hard to deal with, that we couldn't go and see him. And in terms of our family unit, I'd say COVID was probably the best period of my life as a father.
Really?
Yeah. At what other point in your life are you going to get the opportunity to spend 3 months at home with your children?
I must admit, during COVID was when my second child was born.
Right.
And I got the option to either take 2 weeks off, and then they furloughed me for 6 weeks. I was like, excellent.
100%, yeah.
So I spent 6 weeks at home.
Yeah, but
3/4 pay or whatever it was.
when are you ever going to get that option again within your lifetime?
Yeah.
So that's why I say it was, we done so much, we learnt so much together. We'd, silly things. Me and my daughter would start. My daughter was 5. She's a bright little soul anyway. But me and her, we decided we was going to start learning the flags. By the end of COVID, she could tell you every single European flag and probably about 75% of every flag in the world. We spent hours together doing it. They're moments or opportunities that I will never get in my life again, to spend that much time with those people. So yeah, I sort of stand by that. COVID was probably, as my time as a father, was probably a highlight almost. So it's funny how some people will talk about COVID so negatively.
Yeah.
Almost as a prison sentence. But for me, it couldn't have been further from that. Like I say, other than the passing of my granddad, and I feel so bad when I say that COVID was a great period for me because of that loss. But as a father, as a husband, I'd say, yeah, that would be the highlight of it all for me.
So going from a few weeks after, or a few months after COVID, your partner goes back to work. Are you still at the house, or have you moved back to your parents?
No. So I'm still at the house. Relationship seems to be
Ticking over.
Yeah.
What's the next point?
The next point. So, like I said, I had my first bout of depression when I was around 12. Would be the first point within my life that I could identify that I had suffered with depression. My mental health throughout my life would be quite up and down. Self-harming by the age of 12, 13. Early adults, like I said, fatherhood. So, always throughout my life, I've felt like I'm trying to prove something, trying to feel wanted. And if it wasn't laid in front of me that I want you, then I would question it. So the year following from COVID, my mental health would really start to take a turn. I don't know what triggers it. I don't know if it was the highs of COVID to then the loss of my granddad to the returning back to normal life. Suddenly all of these pressures that I felt all my life for this brief moment in my life had gone. And this is why I think COVID was for me, so great, because there's almost this heavenly peacefulness around it for me, that everything was felt lighter.
Yeah.
Suddenly the crash of back to it all. The pressures were back. Life was back. And I would notice a sort of a decline in my mental health over this period of time. She was working more and more, so the option for me to have time for myself was getting less and less, you know. And when I say for myself, I appreciate I had every evening to myself, but I wanted to go out and socialise with my friends. I wanted to go join the gym. By this point, this period of my life, I'd got up to sort of 22 stone. So, you know, I was a big fella. And I couldn't do nothing about it. I would come around to about the Christmas time, and I can't remember if this was the Christmas, the COVID Christmas or not. But you talk about men battling to be here, and I can relate to that. The battle goes from daily, you know, and my battle become hourly. When I say that there was a point in my life where I would go to work and I would sit there and go, if I could just make it to 11 o'clock. And then at 11 o'clock, I'd go sit in the van and I'd cry and I'd sort of pull myself together and I'd go back to work, just occupy myself for another hour. And that's what my battle became. I had made plans to end my life and I was putting financial affairs in, you know, trying to sort finances up. By this point, I'd got quite into investing into cryptocurrencies and trading the forex market. So, you know, I'd wrote step-by-step plans of how to access this money, you know. And it was tough. It was tough. The bottom line of it is I didn't want to be there.
Did you discuss it with anyone?
No. It was purely within myself. I started feeling like this. Just key points that I can remember is in sort of like the June, July time I was on a project, and I remember that being bad. I would send messages, you know, do you honestly love me? And literally, when I tell you my decision of whether I went home that night would be based on the response to that. This is how much I was sort of, I don't know how to, teetering on the edge. And people that I messaged and stuff like that would not even understand their response was probably the reason I went home that night. That's where I'd got to in my life. Of course, the one thing that kept me moving forward was my 2 children. My 2 children were everything to me. And probably what kept me ploughing forward for the next few months.
What do you think triggered it? Like, what do you think was causing these?
The pressures of life, the pressures of life, the pressures of being a father, and the way, you know, the pressures of being the man is genuinely what I believe. I was the provider. Everything fell on me, and I wasn't to show emotion. You know, real old school male values is what had been ingrained into me. Boys don't cry. Yeah. That's where I was at. So I had to deal with this on my own. Like, there's no way that I wanted to appear weak to my wife. So it stayed within me. It didn't get talked about.
Did you ever discuss it with her? Did this come out eventually?
It would come out eventually. I would basically sort of come August, September time, I began to adopt this mindset that my children were young enough that they would learn life without me, that they wouldn't remember me. So therefore my presence to them actually was irrelevant. And I knew I was in trouble at this point. I knew at this point I was in trouble. Because the only thing that was keeping me going, all of a sudden I could justify not being there for. So I knew I was in trouble. What would I choose to do about it? Not a lot.
Did you ever get help?
Yeah, I would get help. Coming into November time is that I knew where and I knew when. And I found myself reiterating to the people around me that I loved them. You know, I didn't want them to hate them or think that what I was about to do would have any impact or was because of them.
Yes.
And we, me and my wife, we went away for a weekend up to York. I was hoping some kind of miracle would happen. I don't know. And I just remember the drive home. I drove home the whole way. She was asleep in the passenger seat, and I swear to like, I cried the majority of the way home. I genuinely believe if she weren't sat in the car at that moment on that journey, I probably would never have gone home. The weekend didn't go quite the way I wanted. And I don't know what it was, but within a couple of days, I sat there and I almost wanted, I don't know what it is that I wanted. I wanted her to not blame herself. I don't know is the answer, but I sat down and I just said to her, like, I want to talk to you, like, you know, I want you to understand something. And with that, I'd break down. I'd just start bawling my eyes out. And all I said to her is, I don't want to be here. That was it.
Did she understand?
Did she understand? The conversation didn't really go much beyond that, if I'm honest. She would grab me, she'd cuddle me, and the relationship up until this point, and one of the sort of things that would be such a decline within my mental health is that I felt unloved. For that evening, I felt loved. I felt that I'm mad. I felt that somebody cared about me. So all of a sudden, I thought, oh, maybe I've got this all wrong. You know, she does love me. She does care. And we would begin the journey together of me getting help. We'd make the phone calls and stuff like that, and I'd begin therapy. So yeah, we started that journey of, you know, she was the first person I'd ever speak to about it. I had sort of spoken loosely to my mum in the run up to this event that, you know, I wasn't happy within my relationship, that, you know, I didn't feel loved, I didn't feel wanted and things like that. And, you know, so I'd spoken to my mum, but not to the extent that, you know, I was battling for my life. That is the bottom line of it. We'd get help, I'd get therapy, I'd start antidepressants, sleeping tablets and things like that. And I genuinely believe that I was starting to turn my life around a little bit. I was getting the help that I needed. That, you know, this battle with my mental health has been going on by this point for sort of 16 years.
Yes.
16 years before I spoke about it.
Was your partner, did you notice a significant change in the way she was like responding to you? Had that improved, I guess? After you sort of sat down and spoke to her?
Yeah, I felt it. Yeah, I felt it for a short time. 3 months maybe. But I think that was just enough to lift me up and put me on the path of, you know, starting to sort this out. So I thought that things were going pretty well. This was about November time, so come round to about the April, I could feel it again. I could feel that there was something within this relationship that it just weren't there. You know, there was no spark. There was nothing there. Which would result in us having a few head-to-heads, you know, about, you know, what it is that we want, not feeling happy. And we decide that, you know, the family holiday that we had booked and coming up, that we'd use as a bit of a make or break week for our relationship. So again, I just felt this insane pressure to make this work. And I was doing everything I could to make this work, but I never once felt like I was getting that back. I didn't feel like she was grafting for this as much as I was. So it felt very one-sided. The battle felt very one-sided.
I get you.
We'd go on holiday. So we'd get to the point of the holiday. Best holiday we'd ever been on. Right? Oh, it was great. We'd done new things, you know. We'd done things that we wouldn't normally do on holiday. And, you know, we'd go to zoos, for example, but we'd go in and we'd do the encounters with the animals and we'd go on these bike rides. And, yeah, great holiday. And I'd say it was the best holiday that we had been on as a family unit. And I genuinely thought that, again, right, we can get through this. There is something there that we can keep this thing that, as a man, I was so proud of that I built.
So where was the next point where it started to
2 days after the holiday.
really?
Might have even been the following day. We come back. The following day was our wedding anniversary. Would have been our 7th wedding anniversary, if I remember rightly. 2022, yeah. 7th wedding anniversary. I'd come home from holiday, back to work, of course. Again, self-employed. You know, there's no, there is no days after your holiday. It's back to it. You're paying catch up. It was our wedding anniversary, so I made a point on my lunch hour of going out, just getting a card, a bunch of flowers. We'd already agreed that we wouldn't do much for our wedding anniversaries. You know, we'd just been on holiday. But, you know, card and flowers, box of chocolates, where it may be. I think I said to her about getting her mum to babysit, actually, and we'd go out. Again, there's this mad, desperate attempt to sort of, you know, just keep reinforcing that we are worth fighting for. And there was an excuse as to why I think she just sort of said, well, we've just spent a lot of money on holiday, etc. Why don't we just stay at home, watch a film, have a takeaway? I was go, yeah, all right, we pick a film. Let me know what takeaway you want, and we'll do that. Come home from work. Card, flowers. No card back from her. Okay. So I sort of questioned it, you know, that evening. Or I can't remember if it was that evening. May have been the next day. I questioned it. I said, you know, that you didn't even get me a wedding anniversary card. You know, I had my friend came round, you know. Her friend was there, in all fairness, when I came from work, but my friend was there and I felt, you know, I couldn't just leave the kids. I said, your friend's a police officer, probably one of the most trusting people around. I'm sure you could have just left the home for 30 or for 10 minutes to go up the shop to grab a card, or even just gone out to the shops together. It was
you know, the wedding anniversary is coming.
It was an excuse at the end of the day, and I knew it's an excuse. She just turned around and said, look, I don't love you anymore.
Just like that?
Day after our wedding anniversary, yeah. And it ripped me apart. Sort of talking about it. Again, I was at this time sort of 22 and a half stone. She'd turn around, and one of the things that would haunt me for a very long time, probably still now, to be honest with you, is that she went, I don't find you attractive. Fuck do you do with that?
It's a difficult one.
Yeah, it's like, you know, the woman that you'd put on a pedestal, right? You would do anything for, you know. There's a saying, right, that I like. Isn't it ironic when the person that you would take a bullet for ends up being the one that pulls the trigger? And that's what that moment in time in my life felt like. I'd do anything for this woman. And I felt like I'd just been, you know, stabbed pretty hard. And then the salt rubbed in. So yeah, that would ultimately be the breakdown of the marriage. She had no interest in trying to save it. That was her mind was made up.
Straight done.
Straight done, yeah, more or less. You know, you sort of have the going weeks afterwards. And listen, like, I will just sort of, you know, just say that actually what you got to remember is that this woman had been with me since she was 17. I was the only thing she knew in her life, right? That takes an insane amount of courage and strength to actually do that. For her to have made that decision, I can look at it like that now, you know. That takes an insane amount of courage. So, you know, do I hate her for it? No, of course not, man. Of course not. You know,
it doesn't sound like you've got much hate for her.
Yeah, it's not enough time in life to hate, right? There's not enough time in life to hate. And I get very conscious when talking about on things like this that it comes across. I don't want to paint her in a bad light, but ultimately this is my story, right? That is how I see the situation. I don't hate her for it. In actual fact, there's a part of me now that admires her strength and her courage to actually stand up and go, after 13 years of, or 12 years of being with someone, that's all you've ever known in your life, to turn around and go, this ain't what I want. it's borderline admiral, right? I'm just gutted that I
It was you. She said
it
it.
was
So.
me on the other end. But you have, haven't you? At the end of the day, like, I don't know if I'd have that kind of strength or courage.
It's fair play. You can look at it like that.
Yeah, and I think, like, again, it's one of them things you have got to. It's how you got to look at it, right? It's how you got to look at it. But yeah, it was tough. Within an instant, it was okay. I will go and find somewhere else to stay. I wanted to keep the normality for my children. And equally, I'll say, I thought I'll go, it'd worked before. I'd gone and moved back with my mum's in a couple of weeks' time that maybe we could recuperate this. So that's what I've done. This time I moved to my dad's. And I wanted to work it. I wanted to sort of prove to this woman, that I was worth fighting for. But yeah, I don't need to tell you that's not how it panned out. But
So did you try going through the whole working on yourself near to the start of once you started separation? Because I know you spent a bit of time like going out running and so forth. Did you do anything?
No, not initially. No. My turning point would be. What would be my turning point? I mean, I'd sit there grovelling for a long time, grieving. I mean, it is grief at the end of the day. Grief comes in many different ways. And I was, she wants her space, but ultimately I can't give it to her, can I? I'm desperate to show, that this is worth fighting for. My turning point would become, I think, a couple of months later. I was on antidepressants, I was on sleeping tablets, still from the initial sort of mental health breakdown. I've been diagnosed at this point by clinical depression, severe anxiety. I'd had a mental health assessment, which is an absolute brutal process within itself. But yeah, so I knew where I was at within my life, that I had these problems, right? Couple of months afterwards, I can't remember what triggered it. Basically, one day that's me done, man. I'd lost everything. I was all of a sudden a 29-year-old man that's 29, had everything, lost everything. What was I here for? That was done. I would sit there and I'd pop every tablet that I could. Sat there, hands in my tablet, and I sat in front of the mirror in my room. I'd sit in front of the mirror. I just remember looking at me like an absolute fat mess, bawling my eyes out. There's no future for me. And I was gonna overdose myself. My phone would ring. That phone call would save my life. It was just a mere friend. When I say mere friend, a mere phone call. A good friend of mine just wanted to know how I was doing. I was bawling my eyes out. They knew I weren't in a good place. They would give me 10 minutes of their time. We'd talk, and it was just enough just to flip me away from that. Yeah. Don't believe in fate or anything like that, but if there was ever a sign, that was certainly it. That phone call would save my life. No, there's no ifs, buts, or maybe. Minutes away. And that's not something that actually I've spoken about much within my mental health journey, and may even be a news to sort of some people around me. But that's the reality of the situation, right?
Did it improve from there?
Yeah.
Was that like
That was my turning point.
your lowest point?
That's my lowest point. It's like I've been here before. I'm here again. There was a point in my life where I just had this attitude that I couldn't even see myself getting into my 30s, my mental health and stuff like that. I would stand up and I'd go, like, enough's enough, man. Like, these are the cards you've been dealt with. Play them. The next day I would reach out to men's mental health talk group. I'd start attending the men's mental health group weekly. Started a little bit of therapy again. Had some trauma therapy. That was my turning point. That was my turning point in my life, because it was a fight or flight situation. It was, I've got to be in this for myself. You know, all of a sudden around me there was nothing or no one that I was trying to prove a point to. I was prove a point to myself that life's worth living. So yeah, I'd begin sort of studying, or doing a lot of reading on mindset, going to the men's group every week, and come to say, I mean, it was still hard. I was still battling, you know. It's raw for months. In the January, I decided I was going to start running. I'd opt to do the Move for Mind. By this point, I think it's worth adding that from the moment I split up, I was 22 stone. I'd lost 5 stone by the January, down to about 17.5 stone. I was losing weight at, a stone a month, through not eating, through not looking after myself. Silly things were going along,
Yeah.
Not eating, going to the gym, working out, sitting in the sauna. I remember sitting in the sauna at one point, just going, I'm going to sit here until I pass out. And I'd sit in there literally just, I'd get out of the sauna eventually. My mate would ring me, fancy a beer? Yeah, all right. Go down, have a beer. When I say I had 1 pint and I couldn't stand, I couldn't talk, walk or anything, I was a complete mess. And it just got to I'd lost a lot of weight, I wanted, but so by this point I've got my mindset. So come Christmas time, I've got my mindset a bit straighter.
So have you been seeing the kids?
Yeah, I was
like pretty regularly
every
at this
other
point?
Every other weekend. The kids were coming to stay with me at my dad's, and I'll see them every Wednesday evening as well.
Okay.
So that was sort of the arrangements.
How was the time when you finally had the kids?
Hard. The first initial weekends of having them was hard. I think when you first start, your mind's not really with your kids. You're
thinking about everything.
Your ex has now got time to herself, and you don't like that, right? That's the reality, though, isn't it?
There was probably a bit of that.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
So I don't think my head was really having my kids when I had my kids was solely on them. But time would move on, things would get better. It's hard. I'm grateful that my dad gave me somewhere to stay, but unfortunately the room that I had to stay in I had a small bedroom with a single bed in it. That I'd pull out as a double bed. But to pull it out as a double bed, I'd have to remove other furniture in the room. That's just how small the space was I was in. 3 of us would stay in that for a weekend. So I'd pull the bed out as a double. Me and 2 daughters, we don't fit on the bed, sleep in the normal way, so we'd sleep on that sideways. Absolutely fine for 2 kids, but of course I'm 6'3". I'm hanging off the edge of the bed. It's not comfortable. It's not practical.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a position, or I'm still not in a position where I could get my own place. Her earnings weren't enough that ultimately I'd be paying equivalent of 75% of the mortgage, plus child maintenance. So 1/3 of my wages every month would be going to her. Another third of my wages were obviously my bills, van, fuel, housekeeping, and then on top of that, I'm trying to feed myself. And so, I didn't have the option of going out and getting my own space.
Yeah.
So I was forced. This is the hand that I had. I couldn't change it. And that was how the arrangements would still be to this day, sort of 18 months on.
Have you got a plan to move on from it?
Yeah, it is slowly coming together.
Is that just try and work more, earn more?
No, the family home's got to be sold. That's
okay.
It. The equity's got to be released so we can both move on. That's the bottom line of it.
I was gonna say, because some would like to stay in there until the kids reach 18, which would keep you in a difficult position.
If it was plausible to do and I could keep put a roof over my head whilst that happened, then 100%, that's ideally what I'd want to happen.
Financially,
I can't make that happen.
even if you got a second house, the bills would be extra high, and it just
listen. I think as a why am I? As much as I want the kids to stay in the family home, like I say, I've done this whole garden that's based around the kids.
yeah.
I would like them to stay in the home, and if she could afford to pay for it, then she would be able to stay there. But she can't. I can't afford to pay for it and provide a home for myself. That's the bottom line of it, and that's a tough position to be in as a man, or as a dad, should I say, that I'm the one that's ultimately calling these sort of decisions. But what's most important is that there's a stable home with me and my girls, and for my girls with their mum.
Yeah.
What the house is materialistic, right? They need two homes. That I need to get myself into a position that I can have my children more. And these are the things that have got to happen to enable that to happen. But them decisions haven't come easy from my part. Trust me, there's been lots of sleepless nights over making them, or forcing them to happen. But I've got to move on with my life. And I go, this isn't the situation that I wanted. So I feel like I can't be held. It's not, I didn't create the situation. Do you know what I mean? So
It is a difficult one, but yeah, ideally there needs to be an outcome where the kids see you as much as possible, as well as the mum, and there is two homes rather than you living with a relative.
Yeah, and when I've got my children, they've got to feel like at home, that they're staying at dad's and they're not staying at granddad's. Do you know what I mean? Not walking in and granddad's sitting there watching his war films or whatever it may be. But and equally, like I will add, like my dad's a single man. He's trying to sort of find a relationship. He's trying to build a relationship, and I'm there with my children. And as much as he wouldn't kick me out, but this is his life as well. That he's worked hard to get to the position that he's in his life, and now I'm there. I'm not saying that my dad would see me without a roof over his head, but this ain't a long-term solution for myself, my dad, or my children. So
no. Hopefully, you do eventually get the property on the market, and
we're moving in the right direction. Yeah.
I mean, not to say too much about the property market, but I'm sure you.
Yeah, I'm well aware. It's painful. It's painful, mate. If I could come up with sort of how much value on the house has been lost over the last 2 years, of course, and equally you're paying for 75% of that to lose money every month. But yeah, it is what it is, right? I stand by everything that I've done. There's been a lot of people around me that have, say that I should have forced the situation a lot sooner. But I believe in being accountable for yourself. Every decision I've made when I'm ready. And yeah, I stand by what I've done. I think that I've done everything I can do that's reasonable and beyond. But there becomes a point where, enough's enough now. Let's move on.
So are you and your ex in a good position? Do you amicable? To a point?
To a point, yeah. To a point, we're amicable. I think I don't like to upset the peace. I don't like conflict. And again, there's always that fear of ultimately, if I upset her too much, is there a repercussion with that?
Yeah.
In terms of how I see my children. I don't believe that there would be. I don't think that's who she is. But then equally, I didn't think equally, we would be in this position we are now. So it's one of them. I don't believe in creating a scene for the fact of creating a scene. There's certain things that I don't agree with, but equally, I sit there and go, it's not really my place to comment. It's not really, does it affect my children? Maybe. But am I accountable? No. So therefore, there's no need for me to interject. Obviously, anything major, I would always stand up and say no, like this ain't right. But a lot of biting your tongue, I think, in a lot of situations. You got to trust them, right? And it's very hard to trust your ex. I have to trust that her decisions are right for my children. And I think as a father or as a man, there'd be lots of times where I'll sit there and I'd question her decisions, but I don't have the full picture. So when, she's moved on and she's met somebody else and things like that, and she wants to introduce that man to my children, well, actually, as a father, I wanted to go, well, no, I want to vet this man. I want to make sure he's all right to be around my children. Every father does, right? But the bottom line is that I have to trust her that she's done all that she is making the right decision for my children. Because as much as when we was together within a relationship, they say that there's no relationship without trust. There is still a relationship between me and my ex. There always will be, because she's the mother of my children and I'm the father of hers. And therefore, the moment that barrier of trust is lost between our relationship as mum and dad to our children, that's when the issues start.
Yeah.
So it's hard at times, and I'm sure there's two sides to that coin. She's probably got exactly the same.
There'll always be.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Two people that cared for each other that split up, but you still bound by kids. It's always going to be. I've seen on TikTok. I can't remember what she was called, but she talks about doing amicable separation, and she's friendly with her ex and her ex's new partner, and it's like they're all a really happy family. I'm like, does this happen? But it seemed crazy that it could happen.
I do know a family that done exactly that. They Christmas Day, for example, you'd have the child's mum, dad, and their new partners all sitting around the Christmas table. They had to go on holiday together. Absolutely bizarre, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
Fair play, Joe. Fair play to them.
Yeah. If it works.
There's some other people that I know have got an incredible relationship. The father will have his children, but even take his ex's and her new partner's children. So they've gone on to have children. He'll even have them at the weekends together. I'm sitting there. Fair play. My hat is off. If you can do that, fair play to you. Wow. He sees it as that's their brother, that's their sister. They're a part of them. Great place if you can do that. And yeah, to anyone that's is actually doing that, fair play to them, because that takes a lot to do that.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine that right now.
No,
but,
we're both early in that story, right? And there's certain things that I sit there and even now to be sitting there and going, 2 years ago, 22.5 stone, nothing, no self-love, no self-care, like hated myself, out of breath walking upstairs, things like that. 2 years down the line, running left, right and centre, marathons, in a relationship with a woman, and I didn't think I'd be here.
No, it's great.
2 years ago. So equally in another 2 years down the line, you don't know, like maybe it's about my children at the end of the day, and I'll grin and bear things for the sake of my children. There's no need for me to hate on my ex's partner, right? Well, that man's never done anything to me.
No, there isn't.
It's ingrained into you, right? That you should hate them, and that there should be this animosity between the pair of you, right?
Some people, from my point, as long as it's good to my kids, yeah. It's I mean, I can understand how, for whatever reason, you may you're meant to feel hatred towards them. But I just hope he's good to my kids.
That's it, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. And I think there's a narrative in life that we are taught and that we are led to believe. Anything that's against that narrative is weird or abnormal. And you know, it's these situations that we're talking about that goes against the narrative. You know, for you, your ex and her new partner to be sat around a table, I couldn't imagine myself doing it, if I'm honest with you. But it goes against the narrative of what we believe should happen. And that's why it's weird. That's why it's unusual. But actually, is that not the best case scenario for your children?
Don't get me wrong, if there was a point at some time in future, I'd kind of like it where all the animosity just vanishes and it's not even a thing. I'd like it where we could swap days at a drop of a hat and we live pretty close to each other and that can just happen seamlessly. And there's not even anything of, but I'm sure that's probably a dream.
You can make that happen, right?
Yeah.
That's within your power. That's you can work towards that. You just got to believe it.
Yeah. So, how's your relationship with your kids now? Is it?
Different.
Really?
Yeah, it is different, and I think that from being around your children sort of 24/7, so to speak, to going to seeing them every other weekend, I think it forces it to be different. I value my time with them far more now than I ever have done. I value all the little things that used to annoy me. Dad, can I have this? Dad, can I have that? Dad, wake 6 o'clock in the morning. Dad, 10 o'clock at night. Dad, you know, all them sort of things that used to just agitate you because you was trying to do everything else as well. My time with my children is now my time with my children. And it's put aside purely for them. Like I said, we spent much of that time, you know, together. You know, we eat together, we sleep together. You know, from the moment I pick them up to the moment I drop them off, they do not leave my side. So yeah, it's different for the better. My time with them is more quality. I appreciate their time more. I value that time more. Certainly challenges, you know, feeling like you're left out in the loop with them, which, you know, at times they'll do, oh, Dad, how didn't you know that? And you sit there and think, oh, because it happened 2 weeks ago and I haven't seen you since, you know, no one's told me. Or so there's challenges there. I think that my children probably see me now as more fun. But they've grown up as well. I mean, you know, they're sort of, 8 and 7. 8 and 6 at the moment. So, you know, we're talking 2 years on. They've in that 2 years, they've grown up a lot as well. Yeah, so I'd say my time with them is better spent. I value their time. I appreciate it more, 100%. I don't. My youngest, she struggles. She'll still sort of, you know, go. I don't know how to say it. I don't know if it's resentment or anything like that's the word, but she'll go to me like, Dad, why did you have to leave us and things like that. And I'm sitting there, and funny enough, she said it to me this weekend. She said, Dad, why did you have to go for that long meeting and then like leave us? Well, obviously at the time, you know, it must have been what I used to sort of excuse me from the house. And yeah, they blame me. They see it as that I left. I'd say that's the hardest thing out of it all to deal with. They think that I left them. I couldn't be further from the truth. But then equally, they're 8 and they're 6. Can you really turn around and sort of say to them, well, actually, I didn't leave you. You know, this is what I'm not in it. I'm not there to, you know, discredit their mum to them. Is that the right way of putting it? I'm not there to do that.
Yeah, I get it.
That's the story that they believe what it is, that I left them. And as painful as that is, that's the story that, you know, I'll sort of go along with until they're of an age where I feel like actually I can and I will put them straight on the story. That I don't feel like there's any hatred towards me because I left them. So therefore, I don't feel that there's any need for me to upset that. But actually, it's quite painful, you know. It's quite painful when you know, your two most precious thing in the world think you left them.
I can imagine. It's make them believing that you were the reason for all this pain, or
And I don't think equally that that's the story that their mum sold them.
it might
I
just
think
how they viewed it.
their children, they see the world black and white. They see it as that I lived there and
You
now I don't.
walked
So
out.
I'm the one that left.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's how they see it, their children. It's their innocence, right? It's their sort of naivety, if you like, to the world. And yeah, why? There's no point upsetting that narrative.
So is there anything that, looking back over the years, you'd do differently?
Anything I'd do differently?
I know it's quite a broad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't sort of, you know, with all the me mindset stuff and all that I've done, I don't think there's anything I'd do differently. Purely because everything's taught me a lesson that I think I can't be without. So therefore, you know, all them pain, suffering and all that sort of thing, I go, no, do you know what? That's taught me that a lesson that's going to stay with me for the rest of my life, which is more valuable to learn the pain of the event itself. Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I would say is that I wished that I could have respected myself a little bit more. You know, I could have made sure that there was things in my relationship that were for me. I'd done things for me a little bit more, and yeah, I just valued myself a little bit more as a life thing, you know, life lesson. I think that would have been a major for my mental health. Would it have saved my relationship or not? I don't know, but yeah, just to make it about me a little bit more, you know, 100%.
No, yeah, I totally accept that. I think myself, when I look back, I probably, neglected doing things for myself. Or I was quite happy to just go along with everything. That's something that I always wanted to try and make sure that I'm doing something. So that's
People pleasing, right? It's a bad trait.
Well, yeah, an easy life.
Yeah, you think that, but
I think I had a few questions at the end. It was more about, so now after going through this whole situation, does that make you skeptical about relationships going forward after?
Does it make me skeptical?
Or does it make you, a better word is probably apprehensive?
Yeah, I mean, listen, how can it not? How can it not? I think is the real sort of thing. Yes, it has made me apprehensive going forward. I have since, moved on into a new relationship. But actually, I think those apprehensions, those barriers, if you like, that you've put up are actually become beneficial in the fact that I'm much more wary of what it is that I want or what I need from a woman. And I think it makes your selection, if you like, of partner probably much more suited to you. There's certain traits within women that I looked for that I knew that I needed, because they're the things that I felt missing from my previous relationship. I don't believe in sort of tarring all with the same brush and things like that. You know, everyone's an individual. But yeah, of course, there's reservations, there's boundaries. You build the walls up. I think that, you know, sort of into your 30s, the reality is that most people you are speaking to have been through a breakup of some form, will have children, and will equally have the same reservations and barriers as you. The right person, I think, will respect your barriers and your reservations and will work with you. I suppose I've been in a fortunate position that, obviously, sort of doing the work on TikTok that I do, that I put my feelings, my views out there for the public to see, which equally means that my partner now knows exactly what I'm thinking. She knows exactly my battles, my reservations in life, which probably has actually helped the relationship. It's made me a lot more open to her, which is actually, I think, has been quite a positive thing, as much as sort of being on TikTok's had sort of a lot of negatives. In terms of the relationship, it's removed a lot of layers, lots of things that don't necessarily need to be discussed, because she knows it. She saw it on TikTok.
Okay. So where you mentioned about being on TikTok, you've said before about you work with trying to help a lot of men, help a lot of dads. Is that just through TikTok, or have you done?
So yeah, primarily at the moment it is purely on TikTok. I've looked at branching out into other avenues, but there's a lot of administration and things like that. As much as I want to be able to reach out to a wider audience and be able to set up private groups where people can talk, it becomes a point where, even at the level that I'm working at the moment, it absorbs a lot of my time. So if I was to start a WhatsApp group, you know, just to sort of put it into perspective, is that there's 65,000 followers on the channel. 75% of them are men, so that's 45,000 men. Now imagine having a WhatsApp group to support that many men. How many WhatsApp groups do you have? Even if I had a WhatsApp group with 100 men in it and my phone starts pinging at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, I've sat up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning as it is, talking to men, you know, just trying to make them believe that tomorrow's worth waking up for, and it eats away at you. And I can't, to put that into another platform where I reach wide, I'd have to step away from it myself.
Yeah.
To protect myself.
I'm in a group with 160 guys. My phone, I've muted the chat, but my phone never stops receiving messages. I think I'll just have a quick look now. And 554 messages.
Oh, and what's that group? Is that just a sending stupid videos group?
It's actually like it's just a dad group.
A dad group, yeah.
Yeah, it's just dads.
Yeah. So, but you imagine there's a man that's behind that that's responsible.
Yeah, 46 messages. It's just,
yeah,
it's crazy.
But that's what I mean. There's a man behind that that's responsible,
and that's only 160 people.
Yeah. So if I was to set up a group and do things like that, then all of a sudden I'm responsible for a group of men that I know I won't put my phone down. And listen, it sounds brutal. It sounds brutal. The one thing that TikTok has taught me is that, you know, you can lend your ear, you can be there for other people, you can help other people, but ultimately you can't save everyone.
Of course not.
And there are times where you have to step away from it to protect your own mental health. So that's why I haven't opted to go beyond, to go any further with that at this stage. I've looked into other avenues, but yeah, at this stage.
Well, the videos that you put out seem to get a lot of traction. You seem to get quite a lot of response.
Some of them do, yeah. it's very up and down. Some of them do. Dad weekend material always does particularly well. But yeah, it's very up and down.
Okay. Do you have any what your plans for the future? I'm guessing you're hoping to eventually get your own place and then have the kids.
Yeah. So my next steps will be to ultimately get my own place and be able to have my children more. That's my next sort of objective in life. Other than that, we go with the wind. I sort of learnt to sort of surrender my life to what's around me, and what happens. You know, as long as I keep myself in a positive place, move forward, achieve what I want to achieve, we'll see. There's no plans. There's no plans. We just keep moving forward.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, I think that's pretty much it. There's one last question, which is, if you got 2 words to describe this episode, what would it be? And that would be the name of the podcast.
Oh, Jesus.
I know. Just on the spot.
Two words.
2 words to summarise everything.
Oh,
If it's something you could come up with, you could always message me afterwards if
yeah.
you're struggling a bit.
I don't know, really. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I could think of 2 words, to be honest with you. I might have to come back
Tell
to
you
you
what,
on that one.
I'll leave it with you.
Yeah.
Have a think about it and drop me a message.
Yeah.
And when it's all finally up there, that'll be the name of it.
Perfect. Yeah. I have to do it like that. Yeah, no, it's been great.
You'll be getting the thesaurus out and coming up with some classy words. But no, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
And hearing your story.
Likewise.
Thanks for
Yeah.
coming. Nice one.
Cheers, mate.
Hey, let's leave it there.